I give you Bill Clinton, 42nd President of the United States of America.
Thank you. Good morning. First of all, Bishop Jones and City of Refuge, thank you for welcoming me back. Thank you, Representative Maxine Waters, my friend for about 25 years now. She and Sydney, I remember after the troubles in Los Angeles in 1992, walking the streets, talking to people, and going to Maxine's house to talk about how we could put the city back together and the country on a better course. It's a very different time now, but in some ways it's the same. When you gave me a chance to serve, wages for middle-class people were going down. Poverty was going up. We were being divided by race and ethnicity and religion. Biggest difference today is we're already doing better, but most people don't feel it yet. President Obama has done a way better job with the economy than he gets credit for. So we're in this crazy period where it is darkest before the dawn. That is, America is growing faster than any other big economy. We have the best, brightest future because we're younger and more diverse than any other big economy. We have the best system of higher education, but we do have to make college affordable, the debt repayable, and dignified skills training again for the people that don't need four-year jobs to get good middle-class incomes if they are trained to do what's there available now. We rank first in the world in our science and technology base, and first in our ability to generate electricity from the sun, the wind, and other sources. We have so much unfilled potential, but we have to take down the barriers that exist, including opening the doors of education to everyone, including making sure every child can get an education beginning at preschool, no matter what zip code they live in, by spending the limited federal money we have not on more tests and more rules, but on helping teachers to be better teachers, principals to be better principals, and making sure the schools fit the culture of the kids they live in, the neighborhoods they live in. And we need to recognize that there are people whose abilities we have not fully tapped. The bishop told me that he was very interested in the efforts that you and others could make to move young people who have served too long already for nonviolent offenses out of their prisons into the workplace, into the schools, into the future of America. This is a moral imperative and an economic opportunity. And all over America, there is now a chance to do this. But it's something we have to do together. All this hullabaloo we've heard, all the conflict, all the meanness, all the assaults, all the things you've seen in this political campaign, you know what's really causing it? People are confused, disoriented, at sea. 80% of the people haven't had a pay raise since that crash, if you adjust for inflation. The median family income, the one in the middle, after inflation, is lower than it was the last day I was president. That's 15 years ago. That drives people crazy when they think every tomorrow is going to be just like yesterday. And people get disoriented. You come here every Sunday to get oriented, because we know that people don't make good decisions when they're mad, when they're resentful, when they don't know who they are anymore, when they think who they are is defined by what they have instead of what they believe and feel. In a funny way, That's what we have to do. In America, we have to get rooted again. It starts with, who are we anyway? Who am I and who are you? And our differences are important, but does our common humanity matter more or not? This morning on the way over here, I was thinking, well, the choices in the election season are pretty clear. Do we want a future with bridges or a future with walls? Now, walls sounds pretty good sometimes when it's scary out there. After the terrorist incident in San Bernardino, must have been a lot of scared people thinking, maybe these walls aren't so bad after all. Here's the problem. Those people were converted over the social media, not because they went somewhere or somebody came here. That's why I noticed a Greek American who's now running an institute at Tufts University, but spent his career in the military and was the Supreme Allied NATO commander. Said the other day, said, you know, I spent my life in the military and we always want more money, but let me tell you something. We're not going to kill our way out of the crisis we're in now. We have to live and work and talk and reach out our way, because nobody can shut out the battle that's going on inside the brains of people. You can build that wall across the Rio Grande and the whole Mexican border. We could build a wall across the Canadian border. Lots of foreigners up there. You could build a seawall across the Pacific. Now, a lot of people in California would go broke if you did that, but you could do it. You could build a wall across the Atlantic. Then the only open place would be the Gulf of Mexico, and we'd send the whole Navy down there to keep everybody out. We're laughing, but it's serious. You could put the Air Force up, every plane, and keep every plane from landing. You still could not shut out the social media. We have to do this together. We need the Muslims in America who love freedom and hate terror and respect their neighbors to join us and work with us to build a future we can all share. And so when things get tough, our bridge may need some security checks. When the economy starts changing too fast to preserve good family lifestyles, we may need some speed bumps on our bridge. But if we replace our bridge to the future with a wall, we are beat before we started. And this whole election season and all the meanness and frustration prompted me this morning to reread the parable of the Good Samaritan. In the 10th chapter of Luke, Jesus is asked, what do I have to do to assure eternal life? And he asked, what are the lessons you have been taught? And the man, an Israelite, dutifully answers, to love God with all your heart and strength and mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And then the man says, but who's my neighbor? That is the great question of the world. Who's my neighbor? Remember the parable? A man traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho, an Israelite, a Jew, was beaten and robbed on the way. Then people coming from the other direction, including a priest, meaning a rabbi, and a Levite, one of the other tribes of Israel, they just left the guy beaten on the road. And then another man came and bandaged him up, took him to an inn, got him fed, paid for him to spend the night, and said, I'm going to come back in a couple of days, and if you need any more money, just let me know. I'll cover the cost. Now, the reason this is important is that man was a Samaritan, not a Jew. At the time, most people in what is now Israel, then was Judea and Samaria, most people did not think he was their neighbor. He was one of them, not one of us. But two of us passed the guy lying in the road bleeding, and one of them picked him up and took him and saved him and paid for him to get through his injuries. If you love your neighbor as yourself, we are always under obligation to try to find our neighbor in the eyes and hearts of everyone we encounter. That is, in a funny, fundamental way, what a lot of the crazy politics of America is about today. We can say this doesn't matter, but you know today, in the troubled part of the Middle East where ISIS is tearing things up, in Syria and Iraq, and we have the largest number of refugees since World War II, there are still 200,000 hardy Samaritans who somehow have been permitted and have enabled themselves to hold together and live together and survive. And I believe one reason is, in all the 2,000 years from the time of the parable to the present day, they have held together, holding fast to what they believe in, but they have treated others as their neighbors. And now there are those who wish to protect them. There's not a country in the world with a better future than America. We have to do the right things to claim that future. We can only be derailed by continued political gridlock in Washington and gridlock in our hearts, where we can pretend we can have shared prosperity without a shared sense of community. We can pretend this economy can grow without a fair distribution that lifts the middle class and restores mobility, upward mobility, to the working class and the poor, and gives everybody a fair chance. The people who ought to be let out of prison with education, training, and job placement, and no prejudice against them in hiring because they have once been in jail, are a symbol. And in this election, we will say, we're going to pass those folks on the road and try to hold on to what we've got. Or we're going to remember the parable of the Good Samaritan. It's like, if we're going to rise, we've got to rise together. Is it about me or is it about we? That's really what this is about. Look, I know this election may have been entertaining and in some cases revolting, hurtful to the immigrants who have been demonized, hurtful to people with disabilities who have been demonized, hurtful to a lot of people. But fundamentally, what we're doing in America is playing out a conflict going on all around the world. You live in a global society that has been brought together by the internet and all the other forces. And we haven't worked out how we're going to live together and have shared prosperity. But we're in the best position to get it. We just have to remind ourselves of the Good Samaritan and keep expanding the definition of us and shrinking the definition of them. The other thing that could derail us is all this trouble around the world. It's already slowing down economic growth in America. The reason I hope you will support Hillary is she spent a lifetime as a good Samaritan and a change maker. A lifetime. Not a professional career in politics, a lifetime. We got out of law school, she went to work for Mary Nadelman at the Children's Defense Fund and went to the South to help African-American teenage boys who'd been imprisoned in South Carolina with men for years, ruining their lives, get out of there and reform the juvenile justice system. She went to Alabama when 40 years ago, already long illegal segregated schools were being perpetrated as private academies that were ripping the taxpayers off by claiming tax credits. She went in there posing as a racist housewife to see if she could get her son in an all-white school. It took a lot of guts to go into a little town in North Alabama and do that 40 years ago, 43 years ago. And when she said, look, just tell me the truth. If I put my boy here, will he be in an all-white school, yes or no? The guy said, absolutely. She had him. And they lost their ill-gotten gains from a federal tax credit. And then the schools all over Alabama lost them. And pretty soon they lost them all over the South. A great friend of mine who was active for decades in the civil rights movement called me after the Alabama primary and he said, is it conceivable that she actually got 93% of the African American vote? I said, absolutely she did. He said, why? I told him the story of her going into the school. I said, you know, elections are about the future, but past performance is a pretty good indicator of future leadership. So I think you should support her because she's a good change maker and has always made good things happen, whether it was the children's health insurance program she worked on when I was president or increasing adoptions out of foster care by 80%, or helping New York recover from 9/11, or helping our soldiers coming home from Afghanistan and Iraq who needed more help for traumatic brain injury, for post-traumatic stress syndrome, or working as Secretary of State to reach out to women and children around the world and tripling the number of lives we were saving overseas of children with AIDS. And when she left office as President Obama's Secretary of State, our approval rating was 20 points higher in the world than it had been before she took office. That should explain to you why she has been so relentlessly attacked in the primary by the other party. Because they know attacks work. Who can answer all that stuff every day? But if you nominate her, we will start anew. I don't think most people understand the role that California played in my becoming president. I did not have enough votes, even though I was way ahead, to be the Democratic nominee on the first ballot until June the 2nd, 1992, when I won in California and New Jersey. Literally 3 weeks later, there was a story on the front page of the San Francisco Chronicle saying that I had no chance to be elected president because the Republicans had beat me up so much. The race was between President Bush and Ross Perot. The headline said, Clinton, not a factor. There was an electoral map saying I only had 9 votes. It's about 370 off, as it turned out. Why? Because the American people fundamentally will be fair. And they figure out sooner or later that people beat up on those they do not wish to run against. That's why they beat up on her. Because they know she's the only change maker. She's the only person who can keep us safe enough and give us a space enough in the world to grow and hopefully help lead the rest of the world out of this mess we've been in. Who will continue the things that the president has done that are working and finish the job on health care, on affordable college, on so many other things. And because she'll make it about we, not me, about bridges, not walls, about putting every American on an escalator to the future, not continue to fight each other like we're in some reality TV show scrambling over scraps of a shrinking economic pie. There's not a country in this world with a brighter future than we have. And you're a big reason. Our diversity is a big reason. California is a big reason. We just have to decide whether we're going to share it or not. We have to decide who is my neighbor and what do I have to do to claim for my children and grandchildren a future that they have to be a part of too. So I ask humbly that you've already got this advanced voting period opening. I ask that you support Hillary because she's the best change maker I've ever known and because she's the person who knows best about the challenges we face and is best prepared to meet them. And I ask you more than anything else because we are now being called upon to answer the oldest question of humanity. Who am I? Who are you? Is what we have in common, the gift from God, more important than our interesting differences or not? Who is my neighbor? God bless you. Thank you.
Psalms, if you can.